Bula Vanaka, I'm Miriam Simmons.
Talofa Lava, I'm Moana Schwenke.
Malo Lele, my name is Anaseni Ulakai, and a very warm Pacific greetings to you all. Welcome to the first episode of Moana Toa.
Moana Toa aims to link Pacific female leadership with culture and arts.
Moana Toa initiative aims to grow Pasifika Australian engagement with the Australian Museum's Pasifika collection. In many Pacific languages, Moana and Toa means ocean strong, and weaves through our great Pacific oceans as many islands, tens of thousands of islands, and in many of these islands we refer to the Pacific Ocean as our mother, a life source. And when we think of the ocean, we can describe her as strong, resilient, graceful, and multifaceted. And we also pertain these qualities to our First Nations and Pasifika women. So to commemorate this year's International Women's Day, we decided it would be amazing to celebrate and promote our Pasifika women who are leading in so many industries. And because they are leading in all of these industries, it empowers young women like us to also know that we can reach such heights, and there is power in visibility, there is power in seeing Pasifika women leading in all areas of life.
Great, so the first episode of Moana Toa today will feature the first female Pasifika manager for the Pasifika Collections and Engagement here at the Australian Museum, our very own Melissa Malu.
Welcome, Melissa. Can you please introduce yourself as a Fijian and Tongan Australian-born woman?
Thank you. So my name is Melissa Malu. I am of Tongan and Fijian descent. So my father is from Nukunuku, Lakemba, which is in the Lao group in Fiji. And my mother is Tongan, and she hails from Holopeka Hapai, Tuanuku Vava'o, and Malapo Tonga Tapu. So as we do as Tongans, as islanders, we introduce all of our the islands or the villages where parents are from, so that they can show connection.
I understand that you were born here in Australia, but you grew up in Tonga. How much of your Tongan heritage did you learn while growing up in Tonga?
Yeah, so I was born here at St. George, yay. So I was born in Australia, and at the age of 10 years old, when my grandmother passed away, my mother, being the oldest daughter, had took it upon herself the responsibility to look after her father. So she migrated over back to Tonga. So we all moved back to Tonga and stayed there until well in about 2007 when I returned here. Growing up in Tonga and returning back to Australia, I realized that I took for granted a lot of the stuff that I learned growing up on island time, in the islands, in the villages, just with the relationships between our family, our kin extended family, and our villages, and with church. So many relationships there that growing up in Tonga, you learn to respect, you learn to honor, and you learn to nurture. And just growing up seeing my aunties, grand aunties making Tongan artifacts like the tapa, things that are used for celebrations or for funerals or, special occasions. Being able to watch and being able to fold and keep those things, I think I took it for granted, because coming back over here, I realized how much I learned as a Tongan Fijian woman. I understand and I know the value of this sort of knowledge.
So with a background in communications, people and operations management, and now the Pasifika Collections and Engagement Manager, how do you feel about this new specialty working in the museum world?
It's been exciting. As you mentioned, I've got a background in communications and people management, not necessarily museums. But coming into here, I realized that all of my transferable skills from working community development and communications can be used in this space, especially for the purpose of enhancing our Pasifika voices. So It's an exciting road ahead. I know what I know. I also know what I don't know. And there's a lot of support out there that I'm very fortunate. And I honor and pay tribute to those who have come before me to path this way with regards to these Pasifika collections. And I've got some really great support there to help in areas that I'm not quite sure of. But as we travel along, I'm beginning to realize how important my own cultural knowledge is to bring to this space.
So now I would like to direct you to our Pasifika collection and ask you about a Fijian object in our collection that you connect with and why.
So within our Fijians collection, an object that I really connected with was the tambour, or the tooth of the sperm whale. A coconut sinnet is tied around it, and my earliest memory of a tambour was actually wearing it. I'm the oldest child to my parents, and when it was time for me to cut my hair, it was a big ceremony, and I remember wearing the tambour around my neck, and that's the earliest memory. So that's what I really connected. It took me back to a childhood memory when I saw the tambour and the significance of it. So wearing the tambour, and it was then taken by another kin of mine as a gift because of this occasion of cutting the hair as myself, the eldest child of my parents. So that is an object that I really connected with. It took me back to a childhood memory.
Well, it's amazing hearing about the Fijian tambour. Can I ask of any Tongan object that you can resonate with, considering that we have 500 in our Tongan collections?
So going through our collections, I really connected and I really loved our collection of kato or kato. They're baskets that have been woven, and there are some basket there that hasn't been seen in generations. I haven't seen it, at least, and I grew up in Tonga. So I was very fascinated by the kato, and it's always been something I've been interested in. I've always sort of dabbled in decorating them or helping to mend them up. I really enjoy that.
And a significant choice of objects, also considering the wise words of Her late Majesty Queen Salote III, when she mentioned that the baskets is the essence of a Tongan lady or Whewhine Tonga. Would you share anything that, from your understanding, we fill these baskets with?
I think I've always been fascinated about the kato or kato, these baskets, because what they represent. Now, every time I've seen them being used, they're in special occasions, whether birthdays, weddings, or funerals, and they always contain things like your lolotonga or Tongan oil, coconut oil, and you'd have perfume, powder, tissues, all these different things that a mother, in my interpretation, a mother would use to pamper their child, that a woman would take around to pamper herself. So this basket as a vessel holding onto that really shows roles, responsibility of a Tongan woman. So I think that's why I connected to the basket.
It's also important to know that the figurative reference of the kato, the ewhinanga, and what we feel the ewhinanga with, like you've mentioned, the lolotonga as one. We also feel our ewhinanga with our 4 core values, which is respect, whaapapa, tauhiwa, keeping of good relations, mamahi I mea, which is obviously passion and loyalty, and then respect at the core. Can you relate with one of the 4 core values with regards to your role here as the Pasifika Collections and Engagement Manager?
Thank you, Anseni. I think the second value, tauhiwa, or keeping relations, nurturing relations, that's a very, very important value for not just our Tongan, not just for Tongans, but also as Pasifika people, because it's the relationships that bind us. It's the relationship between the islands, it's the relationship between family, kin, the rest of society. In this role, relationships are key. In order for us to get our information correct with regards to our objects, in order for us to elevate our voices, in order for us to tell stories and change the narratives that come from our own history, we need those relationships. We need those relationships to remain strong, because they are also a form of information. They're also a form of connecting communities to objects and returning, looking back into the past and seeing what our ancestors did with regards to these objects. So that's why I think that it's an important value.
Many of our aspiring creators from our Pasifika communities are struggling to find their place in this country. Could you offer any words of encouragement for these young people?
I think my words of encouragement would be that it's not uncommon to not find your place in society and really not feel like you belong. Because you grow up in a household with your parents that have their set of values. Now, depending on what generation they've come, whether it's first or second, they have their own sort of rules. And then if you are like us Pasifika people who live with grandma, grandpa, grand aunties, because we live collectively like that, they also have a different set of values and they see life in a different way as well. So growing up as a young person, it would be very hard to navigate yourself, let alone at home. And then you come out to sort of the wider world and the rest of society and you try and find your place there, because Australia, and especially Sydney, is a multicultural place. And trying to find where you belong within that and create an identity, it's hard. I found that myself, and being half Tongan, half Fijian, I had the Fijian hair, which was always pointed out to me, but I had the Tongan body, which was also pointed out to me from my Fijian side. And then I grew up both in Tonga, where I was born here in Australia, and returning, I really had to forge my own identity. And, you know, it's not going to be something that's going to be fixed overnight. I want to reiterate that. It takes years, and it takes years in becoming comfortable with who you are by knowing your values, by knowing your culture, and then just being confident in, well, this has made me the person that I am, and this is who I am. So I think my message to young people will be, I know it's a struggle. It's not a new struggle. And talk to your elders. There are people out there you can talk to, and get involved in programs that will connect you to your culture. At least that will help you see from your parents' perspective or grandparents' perspective who you are culturally, and then navigate your way from there.
You're a very musical person, a talented singer. Would you encourage young people to use their singing talent to reconnect with their culture in terms of using the words, the lyrics of the songs in this reconnection?
I was hoping we forgot this question, but yes, when I was 19, I recorded a Tongan album, and it featured all the late Queen Salote Tupo III's compositions. And at the time, I think I was at an age where I didn't really understand it. It's only later on, when I'm beginning to really immerse myself into our language and the metaphors, what we call heliaki, that I'm appreciating it so much more. The beauty of our language, how we use nature to describe our feelings, and just the meditation that's within these lyrics are really astounding. So if you don't understand, I guess, Tongan, Fijian, Samoan, Cook Island, or, you know, in your language, it would probably be hard. But singing and, you know, learning some songs and then finding out the meanings is a great way to start to understand and find the meaning behind things.
It is important to highlight your many achievements, and while working with Pasifika communities in culture, social impact and communications, can you please share with us one particular program or project that you have delivered?
So I've always been passionate working with our Pasifika youth. I think returning back to Australia, I came to study, and understanding the plight of trying to fit in and find your place. I've always had this passion of working with Pasifika youth. So I work very closely with my church youth, and I've also worked closely in schools out in southwest Sydney. And I ran a program called Confident with the PHI, just to be fancy, but Pacific Islands, it sort of, you know, fit in there. And that was the whole purpose of it. It represented a voyage, and it's told story of our ancestors voyaging through the Pacific or through Pasifika. And it was an encouragement leading up to be confident and for them to be resilient and help them understand that it wasn't easy for our ancestors, navigating through the waters, weather, everything else that they went through. And the encouragement was, we're in a similar situation as we navigate our way as Pacific people in a country that's foreign to ourselves, navigating our way towards our dreams, towards becoming something, becoming someone. So that's a project that it was a pilot, and but the feedback and the interactions with the young people from that, it really highlighted the need for more cultural projects and programs to connect young people, if anything, just to build resilience and connect and culture to themselves and help them really know who they are and where they come from.
Melissa, do you have any visions during your term as the Pasifika Collections and Engagement Manager here at the Australian Museum?
Thank you. So my vision for the Pasifika Collections and Engagement team, first of all, we have to deliver a Pasifika gallery in September of 2023. Now, we're very excited about that. We have a curatorial collective coming together from all around Sydney, Australia, and the region, so from around Pasifika, to come and help us develop the concept of it so that our stories are told the way that it should be. And we don't do anything on our own in Pasifika. It's a collective effort, and that's what we want to achieve with that. This year, we're also working on our collections enhancement project, and that's by digitizing our objects and enhancing the information we have about it. To do that, we need a lot of community engagement and consultation because we have information about the objects. What we'd love to hear is people's connection to the objects. This is really important, I think, to go into here because 100 years from now, if these objects don't exist anymore, we can come back and see how diaspora today engage with these objects, let alone the history of these objects. So I think it's a fascinating project. And we are reaching out to community as well to come and tell stories, speak life into the object. We'd love to have you come and visit us and look at the objects, tell us some stories. What are your early memories about these objects as well? As we work together to sort of revitalize our culture through our objects and through storytelling.